Right now, Florida Congressman Byron Donalds. Congressman, great to see you this morning.
Good to see you. How you doing?
I am doing well. A lot to get to this morning, a lot going on for you guys as well. Let's start right now with what's happening in Del Rio. Haitian migrants now being released into the U.S. Your colleague, Texas Congressman Tony Gonzalez, called it an absolute powder keg. In fact, in an interview with the Washington Examiner, here's what he said. Del Rio is going to get bad. It's going to get real bad in Del Rio. And the reason being is there's still this impression that come to Del Rio and you'll be released. Congressman Donalds, many of these Haitian migrants are actually being flown to your state there in Florida. What have you heard about arrangements that have been made once they do arrive in your state? What's the plan?
There is no plan. I think that's why everybody is dumbfounded as to what's happening in Del Rio. But let's be very clear. We're at the situation because Joe Biden has completely blown up all of the enforcement measures put into place, by former President Donald Trump. And so now you have a situation where you do have Haitian migrants who've been waiting in Mexico, Chile, all different countries south of our border who've been waiting, frankly, for a very long time for a president and an administration to come along that would just give out blanket asylum. And that's what Joe Biden has done. That's why we've seen the surge at the border with Haitian migrants in Del Rio. But let's be very clear. The other illegal entries haven't stopped. It's just that everybody's focus is now on Del Rio, Texas, because it is the most egregious of all. This is a complete disgrace. It never had to happen. And so when it comes to a plan of how people are being relocated, the HHS and Homeland Security are just moving people around, but there is no plan between state government, local government, and the federal government on how people are being moved and how they're basically going to be put into different parts of our country. There is no plan at all, period.
Vice President Kamala Harris has been tasked with helping to end the crisis there at the border. Here's what she had to say recently.
The whole point is that we have to understand Haiti. I mean, talk about a country that has just experienced so much tragedy that has been about natural disasters, the head of state assassinated. And we really have to do a lot more to recognize that as a member of the Western Hemisphere, we've got to support some very basic needs that the people of Haiti have to get back up.
What do you think? You agree?
No, I think that's all talking points. Let's just start trying to get through a question. Look, everybody knows what's been happening with Haiti for a very long time. This is not new about the instability of their government. The second thing is you didn't have 15,000 people leave the island of Haiti and just show up at the southern border. That is not true. They've been waiting in Mexico. They've been waiting in Chile. They've been waiting in El Salvador for a very long time. If you're going to talk about what needs to happen in Haiti, what needs to happen is actually a sound government that isn't corrupt, that isn't taking advantage of all the aid that's been going to Haiti for decades now. There's a reason why the country is the way it is, and it's because of corruption and, frankly, too many leaders who have literally stolen the aid that has gone to that country. But what Kamala Harris is doing right now is pandering. She's the border czar. I don't know why she's standing there trying to talk about how she's trying to figure out what's going on and how is this happening to us. She is the one who's been put into place by Joe Biden to fix this problem at our border. She's not done anything. It has now blown up in her face and in the face of the president of the United States.
And now, Congressman, we've also got House Democrats defunding Israel's Iron Dome's air defense system with that short-term government spending bill, the one that suspends the debt ceiling. Now, you called out progressive Democrats, AOC, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib. There has never been a situation where military aid for Israel was held up because of objections from members of Congress. What message does this send not only to Israel, but our adversaries, Congressman?
This is another signal, frankly, from the Democrats and from this president that we are not supportive of our allies. Let everybody remember what was happening earlier this year. Hamas was firing rockets, not just into southern Israel, but also into Tel Aviv. We all saw the footage of Iron Dome actually working.
Right.
This is a major security need for the country of Israel. They are our ally. And if we show our allies, once again, we won't stand with you, then how is anybody going to work with the United States of America again in the future? It's an absolute disgrace. Those members of Congress should be ashamed of themselves. And for the people who are Jewish in the United States that continue to vote Democrat, look at what you're voting and supporting because they simply do not support you.
Well, President Biden committed publicly in May to replenish Israel's Iron Dome system. And he repeated that pledge last month during his meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett. So what's going on here with the Democratic Party? I mean, there's obviously that very deep divide between the progressives and the moderates, but also the president as well.
I totally agree. That's what's happening on the Hill right now. There's major divides in their party, in their ranks. And the reason why these divides are really showing up for everybody to see is because the entire Democrat agenda is in free fall. Joe Biden's presidency is in free fall. Like, nothing has gone right. I ask people to go think about one thing that's actually going well with this president. There is nothing. It's a complete disaster. He's well past James Buchanan territory with respect to being the worst president in American history. And when you have leadership that has been feckless, that has been shown to have no credibility, these fault lines in your party structure and your politics begin to show. What's happening on the Democrat side of the aisle is that the progressive wing, the super liberal wing, they are putting their foot down. They're trying to take control. This Iron Dome threat was the first sign of that, but there's going to be more.
All right, very quickly, we got to talk about the federal government running out of money right now. Tell me why the GOP wants Democrats to go it alone to suspend or raise the debt limit, and what happens if we do not raise the debt limit or suspend it?
The reason why they need to do this by themselves is because they want to spend $5 trillion right now on top of the other $6.5 trillion that's already been spent dealing with COVID-19. I mean, the spending is reckless. It is a disgrace. It is insane. It is theft from future generations without a doubt. And so if you're going to spend this kind of money this recklessly, then, yeah, you need to go ahead and raise it yourself. Don't ask Republicans to bail you out for your insanity when it comes to spending. Now, when it comes to actually doing this, we are going to have to figure out a way to raise the country's debt limit. But what we need to do is structural budget reform. We have to control our spending. If we can do those two things, raising the debt ceiling makes sense to everybody. But if you're just going to raise the debt ceiling so you can spend $68 trillion over a decade, and I repeat, $68 trillion over a decade, that is reckless, that is not responsible, and I don't know any American that would support that.
Yeah, and what do you think is going to give in this, Congressman? I mean, there's time's running out. We just got a couple more weeks, right?
Listen, this is Washington. Everybody runs everything down to the last minute here. I think the debt ceiling will probably be raised, but the bigger issue is not just simply the debt ceiling. It is how reckless Washington is with the people's money.
Congressman Donalds, great talking to you this morning. We appreciate you joining us.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.